Today we are here with Dr. Alan Allday. Dr. Allday is from Oklahoma State University in Stillwater. He is an assistant professor in the College of Education and has done extensive work in the subject of behavior. So we are so happy to hear his thoughts and sharing his expertise in the area of how to manage difficult students. And we're all certainly going to have them, right?
Absolutely. Always going to have difficult students.
So what would be your definition of a difficult student?
Probably a difficult student would be a student who lacks motivation to perform the task that you've asked them to do. It would be a student who is potentially disruptive because maybe they don't necessarily want to be in the class that you're teaching. That would be kind of a very broad definition, but a definition of what would be a difficult student. Usually you're going to see those two things. It will be a lack of motivation or some type of disruption will be what you'll normally see as a disruptive student.
What might a difficult student, in the way that you've described it, what might that student be doing?
I mean, it could be several different things. It could be a student who is texting. It could be a student who is surfing the internet as opposed to listening to class if they have a laptop. It could be a student who's reading the newspaper. It could be a student who's talking to another student. Those are pretty common things you see. Also sleeping. I mean, that's one that you also see, and that's they'll just put their head down and go to sleep, and sometimes they'll even snore. It's kind of an exciting thing to experience.
What have you seen like that?
In terms of disruption, I've actually seen students stand up and call out a professor before. It wasn't me, thank goodness, but it was another professor, and they actually they got into a very heated debate, and the student ended up walking out of the class, which was a challenge because the professor really kind of continued to escalate it as opposed to de-escalate the situation. And so that's probably been the most severe in a university class that I've seen, has been where a student and a professor had a very heated debate in the sense of they raised their voice, they were got very close in proximity to each other, and then it ended with the student leaving the class. And I think ultimately dropping the class because of this interaction. And the professor also got a disciplinary action because of it. So,
starting at the very beginning, what can an instructor start to do even before the semester begins to lower the likelihood of difficult students?
Well, at the university level, the most important document that we write is our syllabus, and so it really begins with syllabus creation, and within the syllabus it's laying out what are the specific behaviors you expect to see from students, and giving them and not assuming that they're going to know how to behave, quote unquote behave, that you're going to have to tell them specifically, this is what I expect. For instance, when I create my syllabi, I put in there about respect, and what does respect mean to me, and how do you show respect in the class. Put in there behaviors I would like to see as well as behaviors I would not like to see. Like I even put in there, please refrain from reading the newspaper, please refrain from texting, and I also put in there both the consequences for doing these things, both the positive consequences for not doing them. So if you don't text and you don't read the newspaper and you don't talk and you don't sleep, here's the good things that you will get. If you do these things, here's the potential negative things that will happen. That way, if this does occur, I can go back to my syllabus as kind of the foundational document as to what are the ground rules of my class.
So these days, you cannot assume that they understand what you even mean by the word respect.
Right. I mean, you know, because respect looks different for everyone. I mean, we have people coming from all over the world. We have people coming from all different socioeconomic backgrounds, and each different culture and each different socioeconomic background may define respect in a different way. And so you have to be very specific as to what do you consider respect to be. And that is, I think that's the key. And the worst thing that instructors can do is assume that someone is going to come in and know how to behave. I think of the example of at OSU Stillwater, during the changes, kind of as classes are changing, and you're driving on campus, you assume that students would be able to know to look both ways before they cross the street, not at a crosswalk, but they don't. They just step right out and cross the street. So, never assume that that they're going to know what to do. You have to be very specific in telling them, here are the behaviors I expect to see from you, and here again are both the positive and negative consequences associated with that. And it just makes it very clear and easy for you as an instructor to know, if I see this, this is what I'm going to do. And that way it takes your guesswork out of, oh, how do I respond to this? Because you already know.
Let's say the first week of school. What can you start to do in the classroom to head off problems, encourage good behavior?
Okay, well, I mean, the first, I think this kind of ties into the syllabus as well as that question, is to really know your material. Really know what you're going to talk about to an extent that you don't have to be tied to a podium, or you don't have to be tied to any particular area in the class, to where you can move around, because what you typically find is that as the better you know your material, the more freedom you have to move around and to deal with potentially challenging students. So I always prepare a list of potential questions that I can ask, so that if I see a student kind of maybe nodding off, or I see a student doing something they're not supposed to do, I have some basic questions I could ask related to the material that I'm covering to get them back on task. So that's one thing, is just preparation, knowing what you're going to talk about so that you don't have to be stuck behind the podium. The other things, and probably one of the things that most people miss the most, is really getting to know your student's name. When you know their name, it makes it a very personal interaction. As I just say, hey, you, that doesn't mean anything, but if I say, hey, Tom, then Tom knows, I know his name. So the way I do that usually is the first day of class, before we talk about the syllabus or anything, I greet the students as they come in, and even if I have a class of 80 students, I still greet each and every one of them, and I ask them something about themselves that's, to kind of help me cue their name. I also, with the larger classes, I have them do a trifold and put their name on the end. And so I really work hard in the first few weeks to pick their name up, to remember their name, and whenever I am using examples, I'll use their name in an example, or I'll use their name as I ask them a question. So I'll ask a general question, and I'll say, a specific student, and call on them, and they can answer that. And what this really essentially does is create this interpersonal relationship between you and the students. And I find that most students on evaluations will say, and you've probably experienced this as well, I really appreciate them knowing my name. And that's something that means a lot to them and goes a long way in helping to reduce problem behaviors, but it doesn't always eliminate them completely.
Now, of course, teachers in grade school and so forth are taught, don't smile till Thanksgiving, and then you'll have control. How would you respond to that? My immediate response is always, would you want to be somewhere where nobody smiles? Would you want to experience a boss that never smiles? And most people would say probably not. So I think the key to that is not the don't smile. It's set firm expectations, and firmness. I'll define as not mean. I don't mean you have to be mean to students. I mean firm as in, if I say this is going to happen, it's going to happen. If I say that if you text, you'll be asked to leave the class, or if I say if you do this, you'll
be able to earn a good grade, then it means it's going to happen. That's what I mean by firm. The way that I deal with it is, I greet the students the first day. And, I smile, I shake their hand, I'm glad they're there, it's nice to meet you, all this stuff. Then as I move into going over the syllabus, I'm very firm in saying that, I don't want you to do these behaviors, but if you do, here's what's going to happen. And they will test you. They'll test to see, are you really going to do what you say you're going to do? And again, you have to just follow through. Not in a mean way, but just in a matter-of-fact, business-like manner. And I think that's where people, whenever they're told, hey, you don't smile till Thanksgiving, what they assume is that means I have to be mean to earn their respect. Essentially, what they're looking for is to gain respect. Meanness does not always garner respect. As you know, if you've maybe had mean people you dealt with when you were in school, and you didn't necessarily respect them, you feared them. And fear does not necessarily equate to respect either. But the people who actually would do what they said they were going to do, those are the people you respected. And they weren't necessarily mean, they were just, if I say this is going to happen, then it's going to happen. And I don't do it because I'm happy, I don't do it because I'm mad, I do it because that's what I said. Just kind of let your word be your bond would be a way to approach that. Hopefully you'll see how all this kind of ties together in a nice circle here. By being prepared, you can move around. And I tell my students that up front, I tell them that one of my rules is I don't want you to be texting or doing anything that could disrupt other students. But I tell them also that before I call them out or before I ask them to leave the class, I'm going to move in their general direction, or I'm going to make clear eye contact with them, or I'm going to ask them a question related to the topic. And I want them to understand that these things, what it is meant to do is to give them an opportunity to correct their behavior before they experience the consequence of having to be removed from the class. I don't want to just automatically say, get up and get out because you broke the rule, because if I can avoid that, that's what I want to avoid, because it leads to embarrassment and potential anger from the student. So I give them a chance, and they know they have one chance. So if I see someone on the back row and I see them texting, I'll just walk to the back of the room. I still continue talking, I still continue lecturing, I still am doing things. And of course the students think it's kind of silly that I'm not standing in the front, that I'm moving around, but I do that anyway to prevent them from texting. And so I'll go and I'll stand in the general vicinity of the kid. I call him a kid, the young adult. I'll stand in the general vicinity of them. And usually, I would say, if I had to give a percent, 95% of the time, they will quit texting because they know that I've seen them texting. I don't have to call their name. I don't have to look at them. I don't do anything. Just stand near them. And when I see that they quit, I move away. And usually, stuff like that will stop that type of behavior. At this point, I have not had to ask a student to leave for being disrespectful, because I'll try these other things first, and they know that I've seen them. And when they know that I've seen them, then they usually stop. And I've been very fortunate so far to not have to move to the next step. But I think the key is really making it specific to them and let them know, here's how I'm going to respond when I see you doing that. And I'm not going to do it in a mean way. But what it does is it forces them to be accountable for their behavior. It's not me being a mean person and kicking them out. It's the behavior they chose to do that's causing them to have to leave. Again, I go back to the syllabus because in higher ed that is our foundation. And I've heard several supervisors say, "Was it in your syllabus to do blank?" Whatever it is, and if you say no, then they say, well, there's nothing I can do. So anything, you put things in your syllabus to back you up. If you see a problem behavior or a challenging behavior that really troubles you, the way to deal with it is, one, to document what the problem is, two, to meet with the student first and to discuss what the problem is. And so I would say, I've noticed that you've been doing blank, whatever the behavior is. Why is that? What can we do to change that? Do you see how this is a problem? And actually having a dialogue with the student about the problem. And then letting them know that you hope that it gets better, but if it doesn't, then we'll have to move to the next stage, which would have to be meeting with whoever the supervisor would be. But the key is documentation of the problem, making sure you document the time you met with the student, the specific outcome of the meeting with the student, so that if the behavior occurs again, then you can go to your supervisor and say, we've already met about this. This is something that is a concern for me. Would you mind meeting with us so that we can both discuss this issue? I think the one area that it's pretty set in stone is cheating. Academic dishonesty. Most universities have very clear policies, and so those things are pretty clear. And my suggestion would be to talk to whoever the supervisor is first, and make sure what their responsibility would be. If you see them cheating, what do I do? If I see consistent problem behaviors or challenging behaviors in the class, what would you suggest that I do after I have dealt with it with the student? If it continues, what would be your suggestion? And really seeking their wisdom in knowing how to proceed. That is one of the things that we really need to do, because we don't want to get to the point where we just say, okay, well, you're causing me problems, you're going to fail, because that doesn't help the students any. It doesn't help them to become accountable for their own behavior. We want to give them an opportunity to rectify the situation before we, kick them out of the class or give them an F or whatever the case may be. And I guess kind of going back to something earlier, I always set my classes up to where it's an earned versus not earned situation. So I tell everybody, you start with 0 points in the class and you earn points for the class. And you earn an A or you earn an F, but it's what you've chosen to do, not what I'm going to give you. I don't give grades, you earn grades. And I try to set it up from the very beginning to where they will see personal accountability for themselves.
When somebody does something outrageous, our tendency is to get mad about it. How would you address that?
It is very frustrating whenever when you tell students up front, I'd prefer you not to text, or I'd prefer you not to go to sleep, or I'd prefer you not to do other things. It does kind of frustrate you. The thing I always try to keep in mind is we're the professional. We're the one who's in charge of the class, and our response is going to dictate how the other students respond to us. So, whenever you experience a challenging behavior from a student, or they try to give you a power struggle, and they say, you say, yes, you are, and they say, no, I'm not, and yes, you are, and no, I'm not, we don't want to get into that. So, being firm and having firm responses. So if I see a student doing something that really gets on my nerves, I need to think about ahead of time, how do I want to respond, and what are going to be the consequences to that? It's disrespectful when you have a student whose head is back and they're snoring. And it's very frustrating, because you think, well, you're not being respectful of my expertise, you're not being respectful of my time, and you want to automatically just say, get up and get out, but that doesn't solve the problem. So coming up ahead of time with a list of things you can try. And like I said, I always start off with, I'm going to move in your general direction, or I'm going to call on you to answer a question, or I'm going to do a specific thing so that I don't overreact. And I kind of have a hierarchy of my responses, so that my initial response is not to just get in a student's face and tell them to get out of my class. And I think that's really something you need to do well before you start the class. Think about the things that will push your button. Think about the things that will cause you frustration, and go ahead and pre-plan how you're going to respond to those things. and it's challenging. I mean, you know, there are certainly times that you'll leave a class and you'll feel very frustrated because you just think, I can't believe they did that. But again, it doesn't take away our human response to be frustrated. It just is, we are calculating how we want to respond so that we don't ruin the relationship with all the students, because we don't want to do that, and we don't want to ruin their, you know, their experience or our experience. So that's why, you know, really thinking ahead as to how can I respond and what will be my response when I see that particular behavior happen.
How do you gracefully ask a student to leave?
I've thought about this a lot because, and thankfully I haven't gotten to that point yet. The way that you do that is business-like, matter of fact. I always, when I'm teaching the behavior management classes, I always tell the students, whenever you give something positive, have voice inflections, be excited, you know, show some emotion when they've done something well. When they've done something, I don't want to say bad, when they've done something that breaks the rules, think of the most monotone person you can think of and make your voice like that, because you don't want to give neither the nonverbal, like using a lot of hand gestures, or the paraverbal, or, you know, the way you say what you say. You don't want to make that cause the tension to rise, because it would be a very awkward situation. My suggestion would be, if you have to ask a student to leave, you tie it back to the syllabus. You tie it back to this is my response. And you can go, and I wouldn't do it in front of everybody or make a big to-do of it, but I would simply just go to that student and say, do you understand the behavior that you're doing? And they may say no. And if they say no, I would calmly say, well, you have been, you know, reading the newspaper all morning. I've tried to follow, you know, I walked over here and you stopped. I've called on you and you stopped, but you continue to do this. Do you remember what the consequence for that would be? And they may say no. It's like, well, the consequence is you're going to have to leave the class. And they may get frustrated and they may get mad, but the thing is, you always tie it back to, this is what the rules were, and I explained them the very first day. And I explained to you that this is what it takes to leave a class. And I really hate that. I look forward to you coming back for the next class, but for today, I think it's better that you leave. And I guess as I'm thinking about this, I have had to ask a student to leave, not for problem behaviors, but I had a student who was an athlete who came in and went to sleep. And I tried everything I've tried, and I didn't want to, I try not to be embarrassing, but the way I dealt with it was, and he was leaned back. He was on the very top row in a large lecture room, and he was in the very top row and he was asleep. And so I was just continuing to lecture and going, and I waited till a time whenever I asked them a question, and I was giving them a second to think about the answer. So I purposefully waited until I didn't have to talk, so I didn't have to interrupt myself and do that. So as I was talking, I asked the question. I moved back there to where he was. I kind of touched him on the shoulder, and I said, this is really kind of disruptive to some of the students that you're back here sleeping. Why don't you run out, get you a drink of water, splash some water on your face, wake up and come on back in, and I'd love for you to be able to continue. I want you to be in here. I said, but if you feel like you can't stay awake, it probably would be better for you just to go on home. And that was the way that I dealt with him. And it embarrassed him that I said something, but he didn't get angry, which I'm glad, because he was a lot bigger than me. But he didn't get angry. He walked out. He went and got him some water, and he came back in, and he sat down, and he was fine the rest of the class. And later in the semester, he actually apologized to me for that. And so I think that was a positive way of dealing with it. And I'd actually forgotten about that until we started talking about this. But it worked well, and I think that it had a positive outcome. I've not had a student doing some kind of really disruptive behavior where I've had to ask them to leave.
Going back to the scenario you first talked about, where the student gets up, calls out the professor, I mean really disrespectful and disruptive, what should that professor have done?
Okay. When that happened, I think the professor was shocked. First off, I remember this very clearly because I was in the class as a student in the class. So, and the person who was right behind me. So it was a very interesting experience. But the way that you would handle something like that is to stay calm. First off, if somebody is really trying to test your authority in some way, saying, again, going back to the no you won't, yes I will, no you won't, that doesn't really get you anywhere. Because essentially, as the professor of the class, you can trump anything that they can do and get them out of your class, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to get into that power struggle, because then we lose. So in hindsight, the thing that professor could have done, I think, would have been better. As this student is standing up and screaming at him, what he should have done is say, I'm really sorry that you feel this way. I tell you what, let's talk about it after class and we'll discuss this further. And if the student had come back and said, no, I'm going to discuss it now, the professor would then have to say, give the option to the student. Well, that it's not an option to talk about it now, so you can either sit back down and wait till the end of the class and we can discuss it, or if you continue to be disruptive, you're going to have to leave the class. And say, just take a second and think about it, and then I would resume teaching the class. And then if they continue to be disruptive, then I would ask them to leave. If they chose to sit back down, I would acknowledge that they sat back down, and after class I would address them. But the key is set a positive behavior, a positive consequence first, then a negative behavior, a negative consequence. Like in this example, you can sit back down and we can discuss it after class, which would be a positive behavior with a positive consequence. Or if you continue to be disruptive, you'll have to leave the class, which is a negative behavior and a negative consequence. And so, setting it up that way, I think would have solved the issue very easily. And again, although I've never done this in a college class, I did teach children who had behavior disorders and extreme, pretty extreme behaviors. And that's the way that I dealt with most of their outbursts, and just giving them the choice of what they want to make. And if I were that professor and the student sat back down and calmed down when we met with them, the first thing I would say is, I understand how upset you were, but I appreciate you making the choice to calm down and let's talk. So let's talk about what was going on. And you start off with an automatic positive interaction, saying, I'm proud of you. If they were asked to be removed, the first interaction would be, I'm sorry that you made the choice to continue that. In the future, what I'd really like for you to do, if there's something, and give them the positive option of what they could have done, and then continue with the discussion of what the issue was.
Sometimes this feels like a negative conversation, but I think you've made it very positive. What would you say in closing, what is the goal here?
The goal is to understand that behavior is communication. Every behavior is communicating something. If they're angry or if they're disrespectful or doing something, they're communicating something. And to not take it personally. Don't take things personally. Instead, think of it as, what are they communicating to me? Maybe what it is I'm not giving enough examples. Maybe I'm not explaining things well enough. Maybe and I always try to look in the mirror first and see what I am or am not doing before I start looking at them to see what they are or are not doing. Maybe I'm not being engaging enough. Maybe I'm not, because if it's something that I can change, then it's easy for me to change than it is to try to make someone else change. But the goal is to, and I'll say the goal is to create an accountable, successful adult. I mean, that's the way I see the goal of education from kindergarten all the way through higher education, is to create someone who takes personal accountability and responsibility for their behavior, and someone who can be a successful adult. And that's where we're trying to, what I always am trying to build is someone who is accountable for their behavior. You know, if I do this, then this is the consequence. And you know, in our culture, we don't always take responsibility for our behavior. So I try to set my class up to where it is an accountability measure. And then, you know, the second thing is you know, trying to create someone who will end up being a positive tax-paying adult. I mean, that's really essentially what education is for, is to create someone who can be productive for society. And you know, so if you're seeing unproductive behaviors, my thing is I always try to figure out how can I turn an unproductive behavior into a productive one. And you know, and for me, it's when I see a student who is reading the paper or texting or something, which is an unproductive behavior for the classroom, I try to think of ways I can get them to stop that behavior and instead engage in a positive behavior. And usually it turned out well so far. Hopefully it'll continue throughout my career, but so far so good.
All right, well, thank you so much for being with us, and this is so helpful for all of us.
Oh, well, thank you. It's helpful for me too, so I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Sure.